WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock, John Fuller is in the studio. He, of course, is an attorney, and he's an attorney at his own law firm. It is appropriately named Fuller and Fuller. The other Fuller is his beautiful wife, Janet. John comes in each week to answer your questions about your legal situations. Maybe you got a subpoena of some sort, or you need to show up for court. I don't even know if I used the right word there. And John is here to answer those types of questions. And we try to stay away from politics, although I might ask a little political thing, and I warned him about it. The phone number here is 622-WOCA. That is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline. You will be dialing 622-9622. Call John, and we invite your questions. And later on in the show, John will give you the information so you can call him in private, off the air, so you can discuss with him your issues. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Larry. And yes, it's interesting because we don't want this to become a political talk show,
right,
of which I suspect the airways are proliferated
right,
with a lot of them,
right,
from both philosophical and political points of view. But the reality is that our legal system is certainly it is one of the triumvirate of legislative division of powers that we have in our government. We have the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. And so it grew out of how our country developed. And I think it's real interesting. I ran across a little tidbit. We always think about July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence. But in about, I think it's a week from this Saturday, or a week from this Sunday, and I don't have a calendar before me on the date, but it was the date that the Constitution was ratified in Philadelphia in late August. And it had been hotly debated. First of all, it was an exceedingly hot and humid summer in the city of Philadelphia. And it was in 1787, not 1776. There was a big gap between the time we declared our independence and became the 13 colonies, went through the Articles of Confederation, and then found that was too loose to work and needed a constitution. And if you ever read the Federalist Papers, we had some of the greatest geniuses of all times in that particular time, in that particular space. In fact, some scholars have said it was almost like some kind of divine intervention, because for that period of time, when this country was being born and our system of government was being formed, they were more pure intellectual minds congregated in one small geographical area at one limited point in time than probably any other point or time in our history. And you think about it, there was George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Quincy Adams, on and on and on. All of these people were very learned individuals. They spoke Latin, they spoke Greece. You know, they were highly, highly motivated to intellectualize what kind of government do we want that will avoid the pitfalls and the dangers and the persecution and the overburdening of a monarchy or a big government or a despotic dictator or a tyrant. What do we do and how do we secure it for ourselves? And it was a very contentious meeting, and they kept the room blacked out, and the heat was supposedly unbearing, and of course they wore the horsehair wigs, and they dressed in the very high collar dress clothes of the day. And Benjamin Franklin, who was the eldest of the statesmen there, was suffering from gout tremendously.
Aye.
And after it was all said and done and the Constitution had been signed, the story goes Benjamin Franklin walked outside and a young girl, very pretty young girl, she said, "Well, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government have you given us?" And his response was one of the most important, telling, poignant moments in our country that continues on today. And he says, "Young lady, you have a republic if you can keep it." And we are charged with that every day. And we see it at work in our court system because it is the check and balance in a lot of instances.
Yeah, you gave me an opportunity to ask the question that I wasn't sure I should ask, and because we don't want to make it too political, but here's where this comes up and has local and how it has to do with an attorney in Ocala, or maybe in Lake County in this case. The subject this morning was about the Electoral College, and how the Founding Fathers were wise enough to put that into place, even though some people disagree with it right now. And then we had a caller who said we need to have an Electoral College type of a system on local issues because, and she gave the example of Lake County, how the villages overwhelmingly outvote the rest of the county. The rest of the county isn't, if the villages want something and they all agree on it and they vote for something, then the other little communities in the Lake County, they're overwhelmed because it's lopsided. It's not, and that's what the Electoral College does for the whole country. So the question would be, hopefully I made myself clear with the way she said it, could a private individual literally sue or bring to court for a decision to institute a local level Electoral College?
No.
Why not?
Well, first of all, I would really encourage, and if I'd known this was going to come up, I would have gone back and reread it, because I find it fascinating reading, and I have referred to it from time to time, some of the Federalist Papers, because there was great debate on the issue between the large states and the small states and the highly populated states, which could be small geographically, but concentrated with the majority of the votes, and large states with sparse population. And Jeffersonian democracy was that we ought to all be able to have a vote, and it's majority rule. And if there are history professors listening, I want to apologize because I haven't refreshed my mind on this, and I certainly don't recall it with the degree of accuracy that I would like to. But I do know the general debate, and John Adams and Jefferson, and they all basically had sides, and Franklin was really one of the real moderating influences because he had been ambassador to France. He had been an outstanding journalist. He was a voice for the revolution that was probably as eloquent as any. He had been an inventor. He had been a printer, a publisher. He was a Renaissance man in every respect, as was Jefferson and so forth. But Franklin was the eldest, and a lot of the debate came out about how you reach this balance. And probably the greatest tutorial our country has had recently was in the 2000 election in Florida of Gore v. Bush, where Gore won the popular vote but lost the election because ultimately the Supreme Court denied a revote in Florida, and Bush took the Florida electoral votes, which gave him more votes in the Electoral College. It was designed to help have some equalizing influence in elections. And the same way with our bicameral two houses of representatives. In the House of Representatives, states have a number of representatives based upon their population. But in the Senate, every state, regardless of population, only has 2 senators. Again, this brilliant symmetry of checks and balances. But when you get to the local area of politics, and again, this is out of my area, and nothing I say is based upon any research or fundamental wisdom, other than the fact that like-minded people choose to live in an area and vote their conscience and the way they see fit is what our country is all about. And that is that the majority rules, and we have to respect that. And if it's a society that adopts rules that become overbearing or unacceptable, then we don't need to get a passport and a visa to move to another state or move to another county or move to another city.
Right.
That's the beauty of our country.
Right.
We can go and associate. We have freedom of association. And so while it may be very frustrating that you live in an area where there's a consensus, a majority consensus of one particular viewpoint that happens to differ from yours, we have decided that in the local electoral process, the majority rules. And so I don't think you could apply something that was as sophisticated and complicated as setting up as the Electoral College at the national level. I think it would be unworkable, and this is just my opinion, without having given it any thought until just before we went on the air and you mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
But it did give me a good opportunity to mention that the founding of this country and our legal system are inextricably entwined, because the legislative session, the executive section, and the judicial section all have a part to play. And our judiciary comes into contact and interacts with the other two houses, the other two branches of government, because it is the judiciary that ultimately passes upon the ultimate constitutionality of the laws that are passed, which are sponsored by the president and passed in Congress, or that sort of thing.
Okay. And you do have a phone call. Everybody's welcome and invited to call. The number here is 622-WOCA. That's the Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hi.
Good morning.
He has just made the point for the fact of the Electoral College when you're talking about the election of the president. All the other candidates are by majority. But the election of the president, you get the delegates or the points or whatever it is for each of the states as they show. So there's been several elections, like he indicated, that the majority voted for the other party, but the Electoral College elected the other candidate. So all the arguments for majority rules would dictate that we should not have that when it comes to the presidency, because the Electoral College then does not go back to the majority rules, because they're rewarding those states that have the most delegates may not be the populace of the majority. So.
Well,
and that's why you have lawyers, because you can argue both sides.
Well, it is. I would commend anyone who's interested in the subject, and I quite frankly intend to do it myself now that you've brought it up, Larry, is to go back and read about the Constitutional Convention of 1787, because the Electoral College was a significant issue in debate, hot debate, strong feelings, strong language between these gentlemen in these private meetings, and it grew out of a compromise, because the little states thought the big states would take advantage of them in some force. Because generally speaking, and our demographics change from time to time, but generally, if you have an area like Virginia that is 10 times the size of Rhode Island, they were concerned that if they had the population and they could dominate. And so people said, no, we're going to work it out so that we have an electoral college, so that across the board, not just one state or two states or one county or one municipality versus another, but when it all equalizes out, there will be a greater balance so that there will not be an unfair advantage of big state versus small state, and that was the goal. And I wish I knew more about it. That's more of a political science history topic, and I'm sure there are people in our community. In fact, I know they are probably not listening because they're probably in the classrooms teaching our children civics, American federal government, and constitutional law and those things. But it's a very interesting issue and was written about and debated, and it shows up in the Federalist Papers and in articles about what went on in the Constitutional Convention that took place in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787.
Well, I think you're very well versed on it, and I appreciate your opinion.
Well, thank you. Thank you kindly. I appreciate you listening and calling in, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. To kind of change it a little bit, I have a question about my income tax.
Now, this is an area that I have a huge caveat in my practice. I joke about it that I had the University of Florida College of Law put an asterisk on my law degree that if I graduated from law school, I would never practice tax law, and I've kept my end of the bargain for 39 years.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I owe money, and so here's my argument. My argument is that if I put the right number on my W-4, then I should owe nothing, and nothing should be owed to me at the end of the year. As long as I'm honest and accurate, then at the end of the year I should owe nothing. So I owed money, okay? So I'm okay with paying it, but I was kind of playing hardball a little bit. Of course, they won. So now they want to charge me a penalty, and they want to charge me interest, which, okay, I'm the one who made that decision. I'll swallow the pill. But then there's a $105 processing fee. And I thought, well, how can you? That's what it costs them just to take the money.
Larry, I'm going to have to punt.
I can't sue them. I can't sue them.
I'm going to have to punt on that. What I would suggest is that you consult with a certified public accountant or a tax lawyer, because that is an area that is. You might as well ask me a question about the Greek language or hieroglyphics. It is something that is so highly specialized that I would be completely ill-equipped to even hazard a reasoned analysis on it.
All right. Well, I'm still going to challenge them.
Well, I think you ought to talk to an accountant about it. I commend you for your zeal, and certainly that's not that there may very well be. Just because they do it doesn't make it right, and they do have appeal processes and challenging processes, but I know little or nothing about it.
Okay, let's go to the phone. Maybe somebody has a more appropriate question. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air with John Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning. How are you?
I would suggest you go down to the IRS office and speak to somebody about that. You might be able to get the $100 fee waived if you go in person.
I appreciate that. I just don't want to take John's time away talking about my issue.
Right.
Well, if I don't think that's a bad suggestion to go and meet with one of the individuals. I simply don't know enough about it. When I say something on the air or to answer someone, I like to have a comfort level that it's an area that I have some expertise in. And I certainly think that you may very well make a good point, but I'm not familiar enough with the process to comment.
Okay, let's go back to the phone. Good morning. You're on there with John Fuller.
Good, John. Or Larry. John, I'm glad that you're not practicing taxes, because I promise that I won't practice law then. But to give you, Larry, your scenario there is the fact that what happened is, you're absolutely right. If you claim the right amount of deductions on your W-4, that it should come out. But what happened is, and I don't want to get political, but to make it look like people are having more money for like stimulus or whatever, they reduced the amount of the percentage of taking out of people's pay. Even though you claim this amount, they were reducing the amount that had to be paid in. so that you had more money in your hand to put into the economy during the year.
Right.
Well, that's exactly what happened, and at the end of the year, you came up short. This year, I've had so many people say, well, how comes I have to pay taxes this year? Blah, 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 just like you. And the reason being is that artificial thing that the government did was it made people think that they had more money because they were doing them a favor, and in fact they weren't.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. And I appreciate the thoughts on that, but I'm taking away from John's time here.
No problem. This program, I enjoy it tremendously because we have some wonderful listeners. They are very bright. They're well read, and it's a wonderful experience for me. And I appreciate the gentleman calling in. And I wasn't kidding about it. The things that I am not familiar with and don't practice in, I have made it a very, very strict rule that I don't venture in. I'm very good about knowing what I don't know.
Me too. Me too. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Very good. The other day, my stepson, who lives down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, called up here. He was kind of excited about something. He was driving home around 11 o'clock-ish on a Sunday evening and was speeding, which he admitted he was. He was going around 10 miles over the speed limit. But the police officer pulled up behind him by his trunk with the whistles blowing and the lights on. But he was going up a causeway, a bridge, and he felt that it would be unsafe to stop at that point because there was no place to really go over on. So he wanted to go over the bridge and down on the other side and then pull over. Well, the cop got very irate and used a lot of bad language and stuff and bad verbal language and called him this, that, and whatnot. Should my stepson report that, officer, or what would you suggest?
Well, was he charged with any additional charge?
Just a speeding.
Okay. If he feels that, look, law enforcement officers are human.
Right.
Most of them are, I have a tremendous respect for. I would be disingenuous if I told you I have not found law enforcement officers that I thought were ill-trained, inappropriate, and poorly socialized. And you can say that about lawyers and doctors and any other segment of the population. But he is a public servant.
Right.
And the law enforcement officer, all law enforcement offices have an internal investigation process. And if this is something he feels strongly about, there is a procedure available for him to make a complaint, and the law enforcement agencies will investigate that.
Yeah.
Now, I'll share one interesting little tidbit with you. The reason I asked the question is I had a client. He was a very bright young man. He was the son of a very prominent Ocala family. He was returning to Ocala from Atlanta, where he was an honors student at Emory University, and he was going through some small town in Georgia, and some police officer thought he was speeding and took him and pursued him. The young man was getting off at the next exit. He didn't know he was being pursued by the police officer. He pulled off the exit, went into a convenience store and a gas station. The guy comes up with lights, camera, pulls him out of the car at gunpoint, and charged him with fleeing and eluding.
Oh, my God.
Speeding. And then they found in the young man's console of his car a vial of pills, so they charged him with possession of a potential controlled substance.
Oh my God.
It turned out the pills were prescription Accutane for his acne as a young man, but he was facing felony offenses, and I assisted them in getting a very fine lawyer in Georgia to defend him, but they were very serious because this police officer said that because he didn't immediately pull over, and on the interstate there can be several intervening vehicles between your vehicle, and it just happened that the exit ramp was right there, and he needed to buy gas, and so he pulled over, and so instead of just giving him a speeding ticket, they charged him with fleeing and eluding.
Oh my God.
And then because he was a young man, I don't know how old, early 20s, and from Florida, I think they had a pretextual stop, thinking that everybody on I-75 who's young and from Florida is a drug runner.
Or gun runner.
or what have you. So anyway, it was a costly affair that was ultimately resolved where he was not fleeing and eluding, and he paid the ticket. And this horrendous drug that he was supposedly smuggling turned out to be properly prescribed Accutane, prescribed by a local dermatologist because he had adolescent acne.
Yeah, can he be officer be found responsible for using vulgar language?
Well, they have standards in law enforcement and how to deal with situations. And yes, if the system works properly, there can be certain sanctions. There can be a letter of admonishment. There can be retraining. There can be suspensions without pay. They have done these things, and I have seen them in the personnel files of law enforcement. They try to do a good job.
Right.
Do they sometimes fail? Yes. Are they always the situation where one bad apple can give everybody a bad name? Absolutely. I want to emphasize that law enforcement officers have a difficult job. I respect them. I think they do a good job. My own personal view is they ought to pay them a lot more money than they pay them for the job and the risk they take and the service they provide. I would also couple with paying more money, ideally, that they increase the educational and training requirements, and I think you might end up with a better avoiding scenarios like you've described. But most things in society would be helped if there was more money, but that's a real age-old problem that confronts all of our governmental institutions and just about every individual citizen right now at some level.
Right. Good program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you for the call. And we are out of time. What a fascinating discussion, and it always goes too quick.
Always
John.
fun. Enjoyed it.
If we have a legal issue that you can help us with, where would we get a hold of you?
You may call us at our office number, which is 352-547-4292. Our 800 number is 855-534-2565. We have offices in Ocala and the Villages. If you have a legal problem, if you've been in an accident, you're hurt, if it's a civil matter involving personal injury, wrongful death, or a business commercial issue or Social Security disability, those are the areas that we primarily focus on in our practice, and we would be happy to talk with you and try to help you.
Excellent. Always do a good show, John. Thank you for doing that. And
I appreciate
I apologize. I shouldn't have brought up my little thing there.
No, I think it was fine. I don't think there's anything that really ought to be off the record, that we shouldn't do. I don't want to have people think that I'm here to debate or espouse any political point of view, because I learned a long time ago that that's a no-win situation.
That's two asterisks on your diploma, right?
That's exactly right.
All right, we'll take a little break. Thank you, John Fuller. We'll take a little break. Dr. Riyad Fakhouri is up next.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. Wear it, Florida. Partly sunny today and rather breezy. There can be a passing shower at any time. High 84 to 88. Partly cloudy tonight to shower possible near the coast. Low 67 at a few inland spots, 77 on the beaches. Tomorrow will be partly sunny with a shower or thunderstorm in spots in the afternoon. The high 85 to 89. For Friday, partly sunny with a thunderstorm likely. High 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
Hi, I'm Lisa Midget with Kinetic Motion Fitness, Ocala's premier